So good morning. I'm here with my good friend Albert Hakim, who's a certified mergers and acquisition advisor for the Kensington companies. And Albert, aside from being a great friend and a knowledgeable person to have in your Rolodex, Albert is an entrepreneur with 25 years of experience across many different business segments. He's owned successful retail businesses, wholesale businesses, distribution businesses, web-based businesses, as well as spent time in the corporate world as the head of a corporate sales leader of a publicly traded entity. So he is uniquely qualified to assist business leaders in all aspects of their transactions, both in and out of their businesses. So Albert, I appreciate you being here. I always appreciate you talking to you. Welcome, and thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you, Rick. I'm always happy to be on talking to you about business.
Great. So Albert, I just want to start with kind of the first general level of question. You know, in your world, in your space that you deal with, what is your overall assessment of the business climate?
Rick, that's a great question. Thank you. I think for your audience, what they would like to understand or should understand is that it's never been busier. You would have thought that with COVID, things would have come to a grinding halt, and in some sectors, unfortunately, it did. But overall, I've never seen as much activity in the marketplace. I've never been busier, and I've never been so bombarded with buyers wanting to buy and sellers wanting to sell. And I could project as to why that is, but incredible activity right now.
So with that activity, what are you hearing from the people you talk to, you know, prospects, clients, buyers, sellers, et cetera, as to why they want to buy or sell their business? And I guess let's break that up into two questions. So the sellers, what are they calling you? What are they saying to you? And what's kind of some of those general trends from the sellers?
So I believe overall that'll cover both questions, is this notion that much like the employment market right now and the difficulty businesses are having retaining and hiring people, COVID enabled the general public to kind of reflect and push the reset button. So these sellers that have been thinking about retirement or have been having troubles in their business, or, you know, or maybe it's become a grind and they just don't want to do it anymore, or maybe it's a really good business, but they want to capture some personal time again. That's what we're seeing on the seller side. They had a chance to reflect. They had a chance to pivot. And we can talk about this if we have time, about how, you know, the pivot was such a key thing. And now they're saying, okay, you know what? It's time for the next generation to take over. It's time for me to really, you know, my wife has been telling me for years I need to spend more time with them. Maybe now is the time to do it. Albert, can you help me?
Great. And from the buyer's side, those that are sitting on capital or professional managers or whatever they may be, when they're calling you, what is the urgency that they have?
Sure.
What are they telling you?
So there are groups of buyers that this is what they do. Maybe they're called family offices, where they're managing some family money and they want to get good return on investment. So they look for good businesses to purchase. You probably heard of private equity companies. They do this for a living, and they're looking to return capital to their investors, whether they hold the companies, put them together, build them, flip them. So they've always been kind of the more active buyers, and they're flush with capital. So they're looking to buy these businesses. And I think this will be interesting to note. If your business was even this much resilient through COVID, you're a very attractive business right now, because you kind of have proven yourself, you've proven the resiliency, and you're getting a buy for that poor performance in 2020 and early 2021, not even looking at it. And valuations are very strong. What I'm really busy with, and this will answer your question directly, is the private buyer. The buyer who went through that, you know what, I just don't want to go into the city anymore. I don't want to do that. What can I do? What can I do to reclaim my time, spend more time with my family and kids, and earn a living? How do I replace that corporate salary that I really never enjoyed? I want to do it maybe through business ownership. And I have a lot of those conversations.
So that's an interesting point. So that that to me would be a pivot in the marketplace where, the first two examples you gave were family business, family offices and private equity. Let's call them professionals at what they do. Now you're having folks that are saying, I'm pivoting and I went through COVID. I hate getting on the train. I hate
Yeah.
commuting on the, sitting in traffic for 2 hours each way. I want to buy a business, right?
Yes.
So do you see distinct differences? Let's call them the professional buyers, the private equity and family businesses versus that private buyer. What would be what's something off the top of your head that you see they buy differently than each other?
Great question. And this is your skill, peeling that onion back to really find out what's going on. So the private buyer hasn't really necessarily owned several businesses and understand the machinations of business, and could be considered a little naive going into this. So the notion of a private buyer stepping into a new business that he's not done before, pretty scary kind of a notion. So I've got to be very careful at making decent matches, because the truth is, as good as I think I am and as good as you think I might be, there are real people backing up these buyers. So, you've got the spouse, you've got the accountant, you've got the CPA, you've got whatever advisors they have. It's so important for me to do the best possible job I can to give them matches that make sense, because you could waste a ton of their time having them investigate these companies that make absolutely no sense. And somebody along the way is going to raise their hand and say, what are you doing? This doesn't work, and put a stop to it. So it's not just altruism, why I work so hard to do this. It really is, if you want success, invest the time to really understand their goals. And I would point to that as another differentiator between the family offices and the private guy. The family offices, they understand what their goals are. They've, sorted it out. They've thought about it. I don't know that the private buyer has ever really thought that through. Ultimately, what do they want at the end of the day? So I take them through that process. I try to get them to identify, what is it that they want? Is it really the money, or is it the lifestyle? Is it the flexibility? I know when I was making a career change, the most important thing to me was that I wouldn't be hindered from spending time at my kids' soccer and involved in their school and those things. And actually, I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I can kind of chart my schedule. So, and for every buyer, it's different.
And I'd say that's a really good place to jump to the next question, and then kind of think about how people should get in touch with you, because it opens up that there's this private buyer. I would imagine, I'm extrapolating in my mind, there are people that are entrepreneurs that own some businesses, right? They own a business that maybe they started, but now they may be thinking, how do I diversify that business and purchase another one? So that even in those instances, they're both the private buyer or the entrepreneurial buyer. Let's combine them into one thing.
Yeah.
They sort of have the same problems, is that they may be thinking more emotionally rather than rationally and goal driven in that world. So with that said, or with your last answer, what do you see as the biggest trend for 2022 as it relates to merger and acquisition, for the next 12 to 18 months?
Another great question, and this is the one that I get asked all of the time. So it's important to understand what some of the drivers were in 2021 that made it so active, because those are continuing. And if I have to point to one single thing, has to be the amount of capital that's in the market and the access to this low-cost capital. So, when we were talking before we went on about the comparison to the housing market, you're able to buy a much more expensive house because it costs you less. The mortgages are lower, so you can afford it. It's not that dissimilar to what's going on now. So what I look at is, when are they going to raise interest rates? How much are they going to raise those interest rates? And when will that start to affect valuations because now that capital costs more, valuations might go down. That's the calculus that I look at. And as of right now, given what I see, I think 2022 is poised to be even stronger than 21. Even with because the way I see them talking about it, I see them talking about very mild increments, slowly, right? They don't want to really kill the economy, but they do want to do something about inflation. And if there's a good company out there and it costs a little bit more, but it's relatively inexpensive to go get it, even if you're paying a quarter point more, or half a point, I think it's still the right move. I will tell you, the people who have been left on the sidelines looking in are those thinking that in these times, I'm just going to wait to scoop up a bargain.
Mm.
They're left, they're on the outside looking in.
They're continuing to hold and wait to find that bargain. So just in the interest of time, what I hear you saying is the fear of missing out could drive 2022 to be even a better time for those that have decided they're going to deploy their capital. And for those that may have been sitting on the sidelines, the real fear of interest rates rising, they may want to get involved earlier rather than later, because who the heck knows what's going to happen.
And you've got to jump in. It's a process. You're not going to find, boom, that perfect business right away. And I will advise, if you do find it, and other than your wife, Rick, there is no perfect wife, right? If it's good enough and it looks good and it feels good and it's a little bit overpriced, I would encourage you to grab it. Don't wait, because these better businesses, and this is what people are looking for. Remember, a seller is selling, it's their finish line. Somebody who's buying, that's their starting line, right? They want to see that they can earn income and grow this business for the next 5, 10, 20 years. So you find something like that, you do everything in your power to go grab that business, because you are competing against a lot of other people.
Great. Well, that's a great place for us to leave it. Before I thank you, before I ask you to tell everyone how they can get in touch with you, I'd like to just thank you for being a part of my life, my business life, and being a good friend who I can really depend upon when I need to ask a question. And I thank you for being here today and giving us that time. So, Albert, would you mind telling people how they can get in touch with you? An email address, a phone number, etc.
Absolutely. So please connect with me on LinkedIn, albert.hakim, or you can call me at 516-626-2211, or by email, albert@kensingtoncompany.com.
Great. Albert, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. Appreciate it. I'm so glad that you're off to a great start in 2022. And I know we'll do this again, and we're going to hear even more great stories.
Anytime, Rick.
Thanks. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.